Some dogs bark at squirrels, others at the mailman, but this one he barked at a painting and unearthed a lie buried for 16 years. Stryker wasn't just any dog. He didn't bark for show, and he never barked without cause. But when his deep, guttural growl echoed through the grand foyer of the McAllister estate and locked onto the oil portrait above the fireplace, Detective Clara Mae Whitlow froze. The German Shepherd stood rigid, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the woman with pearls captured in thick brush strokes from decades past. This was supposed to be a routine walkthrough. The sprawling southern colonial mansion nestled among ancient oaks in Savannah, Georgia, had recently been inherited by a private foundation after the death of Wyatt McAllister, a man controversial in both federal courtrooms and Southern society circles. Clara Mae had arrived with canine officer Amos Thatcher and his dog Stryker to follow up on an anonymous tip, a letter that simply read the truth never left the house. Years on the force had taught her most tips like this went nowhere. But when Amos called in a favor mentioning Stryker had behaved oddly the last time they passed the estate, something told her this wouldn't be a standard case closure. Now she stood beneath 15-foot ceilings, chandeliers thick with dust, watching a dog bark relentlessly at a portrait of a woman no one remembered hung over a cold fireplace that hadn't seen a flame in decades. "Does he usually react like this?" Clara Mae asked, arms crossed posture, suddenly alert. Amos stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Not unless something's off. With Stryker, it's either drug's blood or a story hidden in plain sight." Clara Mae raised an eyebrow. "You think the painting's hiding drugs? I think he's telling us something's wrong," Amos replied. The house was still the kind of silence only places heavy with forgotten power hold, where secrets lived in the walls. Ghosts didn't need to whisper. They simply waited. The McAllister estate hadn't seen sunlight in over a year. Since the judge's death battles over inheritance, old property claims, liens, and political storms about his past had kept the mansion locked tight. But with the foundation finally in control, Clara Mae secured temporary clearance for a silent walkthrough, meant as a symbolic check, until Stryker barked. Clara Mae stepped closer to the fireplace, tilting her head at the worn portrait, likely from the 1960s. A woman with pale eyes and red lipstick stared softly, holding a single red rose against a navy blue dress. Calm, yet something about her gaze felt cold. "What's your nose telling you, boy?" Clara Mae murmured. Stryker let out a low whine, his front paw lifting slightly, pressing toward the frame. Amos knelt beside him, hand steady on his collar. "He's not budging," he whispered. "Whatever it is, it's not going anywhere." Clara Mae stepped back, scanning the fireplace. Stones surround, no obvious cracks, but up close a tiny scratch at the bottom edge of the frame caught her eye. Not fresh, not from a moving crew. "Someone tried to remove this," she said. Amos glanced up and nodded. They moved to the adjacent study sunlight, slicing through half-closed shutters, long lines cast across the Persian rug. Clara Mae sifted through estate files left by the foundation's lawyers' property maps, land titles, outdated tax records. Nothing about a safe, no compartments, certainly nothing about a woman in pearls. She tapped her finger against the photograph of the painting she'd snapped. Something tugged at her gut. A whisper she'd learned to trust after 12 years on the force. In Stryker. He was still barking. "Let me guess," Amos said. "You want to look behind the painting." Clara Mae turned toward him, a faint smile crossing her lips. What gave it away? Back in the grand hall, she stood on a step-ladder, gloved hands easing the painting from its frame. She expected bolts, Maybe an alarm, but the frame gave way almost too easily. Behind the canvas drywall, old, slightly yellowed from decades of fireplace heat, she tapped gently. Hollow. Stryker barked again. Yeah, I hear you, she said. A small notch near the top corner of the drywall caught her eye. Not a nail, not a screw, more like a pin release. She pressed it. A soft click, then silence. The drywall shifted less than an inch, but it was enough to expose a hairline seam. Clara Mae drew in a sharp breath. Call a wall scanner. I want to see what's behind that seam, she whispered. As they left the room, Stryker barked one last sharp note, sharp final. Sharp. Stryker relaxed slightly, but his eyes never left the portrait. From the top of the stairs, an older woman observed. She hadn't introduced herself. Clara Mae Whitlow hadn't even noticed her until now. She stepped into the light. Late 60s eyes, cautious but refined. She held a small notebook close to her chest. You're looking where no one ever dared, the woman said. Clara Mae froze. Who are you? I used to be the judge's assistant, the woman said softly. He told me to burn that painting before he died. I couldn't do it. Why not? The woman's lips trembled as she stared at the portrait. Because his brother didn't deserve what happened. And that painting, that was all he left behind. Clara Mae felt her throat tighten. His brother. The woman nodded. He said the truth was inside this house. I didn't know he meant it literally. Clara Mae Whitlow stood motionless at the foot of the staircase, eyes locked on the older woman in the soft gray cardigan. The woman looked like a retired librarian, polite, unassuming, gentle, but her words echoed like gunfire through the silent hall. He said the truth was inside this house. Clara Mae broke the silence. What was your name again? Maud? Maud Cartwright, the woman replied. I was Wyatt McAllister's clerk for nearly 25 years. Stayed on after he retired, helped organize things toward the end. Clara Mae stepped closer. In this painting, he told you to burn it. Maud nodded slowly. 2 weeks before he died. Said it was cursed. Said if anyone ever tried to take it down, they needed to know what they were inviting in. Stryker let out a low rumble again, gaze unwavering from the portrait above the fireplace. Maud looked down at the German Shepherd with a strange softness in her eyes. He knows, doesn't he? Clara. Mae didn't answer directly. What do you know about the judge's brother? Maud's voice dropped barely above a whisper. Boone McAllister. He was a kind soul. A high school teacher, loved the kids, loved numbers, didn't belong in the world as it moved. That was always the problem. Clara Mae blinked. He was convicted of fraud, right? Maud inhaled sharply, eyes shining. That was the lie. Boone was innocent. But the judge, he needed someone to fall. Clara Mae felt her stomach turn. What do you mean, needed someone to fall? Maud looked down at her hands. A donor. Big money. Old oil. The kind of people who don't like being told no. They were being audited. Boone had uncovered inconsistencies. Wyatt was tipped off. Instead of protecting his brother, he framed him, buried the paper trail, and sealed everything behind that wall. Clara Mae leaned in. And you never told anyone, Maud looked ashamed. I was young. Scared. I stayed quiet too long. An hour later, the wall scanner was in place, operated by a young technician with wide eyes and trembling hands. Clara Mae stood with Amos Thatcher and Stryker, the room buzzing with tension. There's definitely something back there, the scanner read. Metal, shallow, about the size of a small safe. Clara Mae crossed her arms. Any alarm triggers? Doesn't look like it, but I'd be careful, Maud said. He didn't trust digital locks. If it's the safe I think it is. Will it need a key? Clara Mae asked. Maud hesitated, then reached into her cardigan and pulled out an old brass key on a faded green ribbon. I kept it all these years, just in case. Clara Mae nodded once. Let's open it. The compartment was carefully opened an hour later by a specialized locksmith under Clara Mae's supervision. The drywall seam swung outward like a door revealing a hidden safe tucked into the brickwork of the fireplace wall. It was old dusty, scratched around the dial, proof someone had tried and failed before. Clara Mae took the key from Maud, inserted it, and slowly turned. A loud metallic click echoed. She pulled the door open. Inside, wrapped in brittle envelopes and a silk handkerchief, lay a stack of bound ledgers, several cassette tapes, and a manila folder marked Boone, for when the truth matters more than pride. Clara Mae reached in gloved hands, trembling slightly. She pulled out the top folder and opened it. Inside were financial statements spanning 2 decades, handwritten notes, photocopied receipts, and at the bottom, a typed letter signed by Wyatt McAllister. To whom it may concern, if you are reading this, I am dead. I leave behind a sin too heavy for any priest. I condemned an innocent man, my brother, to protect the illusion of justice and secure my place in history. The records and clothes will show the audit trail, the fraud, the falsified dates. Boone knew. He tried to stop them. I made sure no one would believe him. I deserve no mercy, but he does. Wyatt McAllister, Clara Mae. Whitlow's hands trembling passed the letter to Amos Thatcher. He read it in silence. Behind them, Maud Cartwright broke into sobs. Stryker lay by the fireplace, no longer barking, merely watching. The next morning, Clara Mae walked into the Savannah DA's office carrying 2 evidence boxes and a scanned copy of the confession. The assistant DA on duty raised a curious eyebrow. This about the McAllister brothers? Clara Mae dropped the folder on his desk. I have a signed confession, original financial ledgers, and 2 corroborating cassette tapes. He flipped open the folder mouth slack. Jesus, he really did it. Clara Mae nodded. Boone McAllister had spent 16 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He was out now, barely. Terminal cancer, living in a halfway house in Macon. The DA leaned back, rubbing his face. We'll file a petition to vacate the conviction. But it's too late for justice, Clara Mae said softly. It's just on time for the truth. That afternoon, Clara Mae drove to Macon. The halfway house was modest white brick, a small yard, a rocking chair on the porch. Inside, Boone McAllister sat in a worn sweater, reading a crossword book by the window. He looked up slowly as she knocked. Detective Whitlow. She nodded. May I sit? He gestured gently. Sure. Don't get many visitors. She handed him the envelope. Boone took it with trembling hands. This is your brother's words, his confession. He kept it all behind a wall. Stryker found it. Boone looked toward the window, blinking back tears. I told them I didn't do it. I begged. Clara Mae looked down. He knew. He just didn't have the courage to admit it while you were behind bars. Boone's voice cracked. It doesn't fix everything. No, she said. But we'll make sure the world knows the truth. He chuckled bitterly. Don't tell me he barked at the painting or something. Clara Mae smiled faintly. Actually, that's exactly what happened. Later that night, Clara Mae sat in her apartment. Stryker curled up at her feet. She typed her report, but her mind kept returning to Boone's face, the disbelief, the pain, and finally, the peace. She looked down at the German shepherd. You knew all along, didn't you? Stryker thumped his tail once, eyes half closed. Clara Mae leaned down and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." She gazed out the window into quiet Savannah night and murmured softly, "Some dogs bark to warn you. Others bark to wake the dead." Morning sunlight crept across the courthouse steps like a reluctant witness. It was the kind of crisp Savannah morning that made tourists pause for iced coffee and photograph Spanish moss. But for Clara Mae Whitlow, standing outside the Chatham County Courthouse with a thick file under her arm and Stryker at her side, the day felt heavy with history. Media vans had already gathered more than she anticipated. Word had spread fast. A dog barked at a painting a secret vault discovered a brother framed a confession from the grave. The headlines wrote themselves. And while most of Savannah woke to morning show teasers and sensational sound bites, Clara Mae was here to finish what Stryker had started. The petition to vacate Boone McAllister's conviction was set to be reviewed. Judge Silas Thorne presiding. Clara Mae knew him by the book sharp, never one for drama, exactly how she wanted it. She patted Stryker's back gently. "You ready for your moment, hero?" The dog didn't move, staring straight ahead as if he already understood what justice looked like. The courtroom wasn't full, but it hummed with quiet tension. Reporters lined the back row. A few law students scribbled notes. Maud Cartwright sat near the front, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Boone McAllister, thinner than he had any right to be, sat quietly in a pressed shirt and navy cardigan, breathing shallow, spine straight. When Clara Mae entered, their eyes met. He nodded once. She returned the gesture. Judge Silas Thorne read the file in silence for nearly 5 minutes. Pages turned page after page. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, the judge spoke. "Detective Whitlow, you led the reinvestigation." Clara Mae stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Please allow me to walk the court through my findings." "Keep it concise." Clara Mae Whitlow stepped forward, voice steady. "Last week I received an anonymous letter suggesting evidence remained at the McAllister estate that could clear Boone McAllister. While inspecting the property, our canine unit Stryker had fixated on a painting above the fireplace. After a careful search, we uncovered a concealed compartment containing Ledger's audio tapes and a signed confession from Wyatt McAllister. Judge Silas Thorne raised an eyebrow. "You're telling this court a police dog led you to exculpatory evidence from a federal judge's private safe?" "Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm saying. The documents have been verified by the district attorney's office. Signatures match. The tapes corroborate key dates and interactions. That's enough for a full reversal." The judge glanced at Boone McAllister. "Mr. McAllister, is there anything you wish to say?" Boone rose slowly, gripping the table for balance. "My voice is soft, but my resolve is firm. I lost my career, my home, 16 years of my life. Yet, I never lost hope. Because someone once told me the truth never dies. It waits for the right ears. I never imagined that ear would belong to a dog." A few chuckles ran through the gallery. Clara Mae noticed the judge almost smiling. The ruling was swift and clean. Conviction vacated. Official apology issued. Case file sealed for federal review. Outside, the sun had climbed higher. Clara Mae stood by the courthouse steps as Boone McAllister slowly emerged, leaning on a cane. He paused beside her. "You believed me before I even spoke," he said. "I didn't," Clara Mae replied. Stryker did. They both looked down at the German Shepherd, who sat perfectly still, tongue-out tail flicking against her boot. Boone knelt, wincing as he bent gently, placing a hand on Stryker's head. "Thank you," he whispered. "You barked loud enough for the world to hear." Back at the precinct, the celebration was modest but genuine. A few officers patted Amos Thatcher on the back. Others brought treats for Stryker, who true to form ignored the fanfare entirely and parked himself under Clara Mae's desk like any other day. Hank Dobbs pulled Clara Mae aside. "You made waves, Whitlow. Good waves, but waves." Clara Mae raised a brow. "That's supposed to be a compliment." He chuckled. "Means the mayor's office called. Said a German Shepherd just saved the city's face. We're not used to dogs making headlines for the right reasons." Clara Mae leaned against the file cabinet. "Well, this one barks smarter than most people talk." Hank hesitated, then handed her a folder. "They want you to lead a new unit cold cases involving suspected judicial misconduct. You'll be the lead. Stryker stays with you." Clara Mae blinked. "Me and the dog. People trust us now. After what Stryker did, they trusted him too." Clara Mae looked down at her partner. Stryker blinked up, tilted his head, then yawned. "Guess we're not done yet," she murmured softly. The next few days blurred with interviews and paperwork. Clara Mae gave one public statement, short-focused, careful not to sensationalize, but she made sure to deliver the line that mattered. It took a dog's instinct to do what years of silence could not. Pull truth out of hiding. The footage went viral. A child in Oregon sent Stryker a hand-drawn medal. A retired teacher in Minnesota wrote, saying she cried when she saw Boone McAllister's name cleared. Not everyone cheered. One evening, as Clara Mae walked Stryker through Forsyth Park, a man approached. Expensive shoes, thin-rimmed glasses, hands in his coat pockets. "You're Detective Whitlow?" he asked. Clara Mae slowed. "Depends who's asking." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just someone interested in how far she planned to go." Clara Mae stopped. "You threatening me?" "Of course not," he said. "Just a reminder that the McAllister family wasn't the only one keeping secrets behind walls." Stryker moved forward, quiet and deliberate. A low growl rumbled in his throat. The man flinched. Clara Mae gave a small, polite smile. "He doesn't bark without reason." The man nodded once, then walked away, vanishing into the trees. Later that night, Clara Mae opened a fresh case folder from the new unit. Victim names were redacted judges, too. Someone had scribbled one sentence at the top, "Start with the painting." She looked down at Stryker. His ears perked. He was already on his feet. Clara Mae Whitlow grabbed her coat, and said what had become their ritual line. "Let's go find the lie." The new task force office was nothing special. A windowless corner room tucked inside the municipal annex downtown. But Clara Mae didn't care about peeling paint or the hum of old fluorescent lights. All she needed was space, quiet, and Stryker. She had all three. Pinned to the corkboard were case files from more than a dozen cold convictions tied to questionable judges. Some retired, some deceased, at least one still on the bench. Stryker sat curled under the desk, head on his paws, ears twitching every time someone passed in the hallway. Clara Mae went through the latest file again. The one with the handwritten note? Start with the painting. Not subtle. The case involved a woman named Josie Bell Rawlins, convicted 20 years ago of armed robbery and assault on a state senator's aide. No witnesses, no fingerprints, just a forced confession after 18 hours of interrogation and a weapon later linked to her solely by an anonymous tip. She served 19 years before parole. Her record was still a blot on her life. Clara Mae flipped to a photo from the original case file. Josie, in a tan jumpsuit, hollow-eyed, staring at the camera. But what drew Clara Mae's attention wasn't her, it was the background. A courtroom wall, and above the judge's bench, a painting of a blue jay in a maple tree. A strange piece for a criminal court. Clara Mae squinted. The frame was wide, too wide, heavy beveling, almost baroque for something modern. Stryker lifted his head. She tilted the file toward him. "Recognize anything?" He stared for a moment, then stood, ears forward. Clara Mae grabbed her jacket. The Vernon Maddock courthouse still bore the worn charm of early 2000s architecture. Lots of brick beige marble, the lingering smell of bad coffee in every hallway. The courtroom where Josie Bell Rawlins had been sentenced hadn't changed much. Same benches, same scuffed floor. And yes, the same painting. Clara Mae stepped inside quietly. No hearing scheduled until late afternoon, the room empty sunlight angling through high windows. Stryker trotted to the front. The painting was even more vivid in person. A blue jay perched in a tree with red leaves beak slightly open. About 3 feet tall, encased in an ornate golden frame, bolted high behind the judge's bench. Clara Mae walked toward it, examining the base of the frame through her phone's zoom lens. 4 screws. 2 looked newer than the others. The frame was slightly misaligned. Stryker began to bark, not loud, not wild, but focused. 3 short bursts, then a low growl. Clara Mae had heard that pattern before. Back at the McAllister estate, she made a few calls. 30 minutes later, the building's operations supervisor met her with a ladder and tools. Clara Mae climbed and unscrewed the frame, slowly feeling resistance halfway through. "What the hell?" she murmured. It wasn't just a painting. It was a panel. Behind it, a recessed metal plate, rusted in corners, scratched along the edges slightly loose. Clara Mae looked down at the supervisor. "Ever seen this before?" He shook his head. "You kidding? That's been up since I started maybe 2004. Stryker barked again. Clara Mae pressed her palm against the panel. It shifted. Hollow space behind. Inside a plastic bag containing 2 cassette tapes and a folded yellowed sheet of paper. She took a breath, opened it, unfolded the page. The weapon was never hers. She never touched it. I told myself I was doing it for the greater good. I was wrong. Judge Vernon Maddock. Clara Mae blinked. Another judge. Another secret. Another bark that refused to be ignored. She carried the tapes and letter back to the task force office. Stryker sat at attention while she digitized the tapes through an old cassette deck. On the first tape, a younger male voice, Judge Vernon Maddock, by voice ID, discussed the pressure to close the case quickly, citing political optics and campaign support. He mentioned Josie by name, described moving the weapon from evidence room B to locker C for narrative consistency. The second tape was quieter, more personal. Years later, Maddock whispered into a recorder I see her face. I remember how she looked at me when the sentence came down. Like she knew I was lying and didn't need proof. Just her eyes. And those eyes never left me. Not once. Clara Mae sat back in her chair, unaware she was crying, until Stryker pressed his head against her knee. The next morning, Clara Mae met Josie Bell Rawlins at a community garden where she volunteered. Josie Bell Rawlins was 50 now, silver streaking her braids, scars hidden beneath her skin. For the first minute, she didn't speak, just stared at Clara Mae Whitlow with eyes full of wary suspicion. Clara Mae handed her the transcript of the confession. Josie didn't flinch. I knew she whispered quietly. Clara Mae nodded. I know you did. "Will they clear your name? We're filing today," Clara Mae said. "The tapes help. And the fact that Stryker found it where no one else even thought to look." Josie glanced down at the dog. Stryker met her gaze, tail gently wagging. Josie knelt in the dirt beside a bed of tomatoes, hand resting lightly on his back. "No one listened to me," she said. But maybe the dog was always listening. Later that day, Clara Mae pinned a new photo to the corkboard, a shot of the courtroom painting a red string connecting it to the McAllister case. Another photo followed older black and white, a judge from the 1980s, edges blurred by coffee stains. Behind him, another painting. Clara Mae leaned back, studying it. "Stryker. How many more of these are out there?" she murmured. The dog tilted his head, as if to say there was only one way to find out. Standing over the corkboard in the task force office, Clara Mae sipped stale coffee, analyzing the photos like puzzle pieces from a rigged game. 3 paintings, 3 courtrooms, 3 judges, 3 lives ruined, and now 2 cleared. But the dots were beginning to form a line. Stryker lay by the door, watching without moving, chest rising steadily, ears alert, always listening. Clara Mae studied a photo from 1980-1989, grainy newspaper quality, Judge Jed Polk. Smiling hands folded in front of a wood-paneled courtroom. Behind him, a painting of a weeping willow and a pond. She traced her finger along the tree to the frame. Too low res for detail, but something about the bottom edge looked off as if the frame were tilted. Another courtroom. Another potential secret. Another bark waiting. Clara Mae pulled out her phone. "Hank, it's me. You've got access to Archive Courtroom 3C at the 11th Circuit Building, late 80s. A sigh came over the line. "Clara, you're chasing ghosts. And they're barking back." Silence. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll pull a key. But whatever you do, don't let it turn political. The DA's office is twitchy enough." Clara Mae looked down at Stryker. He doesn't care about politics. He just smells the lies. The 11th Circuit Building was a relic of another era. Gold-trimmed ceilings, brass door handles, heavy velvet curtains, still hung like theatrical drapes. Clara Mae stepped inside. Stryker trotting beside her. The click of his nails echoed down the long hallway. Courtroom 3C hadn't been used in over a decade. It still smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner. The painting remained large, wide, dusty. The weeping willow branches drooping over a murky pond hung directly behind the judge's chair. Colors faded, but the gold leaf frame caught the light faintly. Stryker moved forward immediately. He sniffed, stopped, sat, then let out a single, sharp bark. Clara Mae stepped closer, examining the base of the frame. Unlike previous paintings, this one was flush against the wall. No screws, no hinges, just wood. Too perfect, too symmetrical. Running her fingers along the bottom right corner, she felt it a groove. She pulled. The painting pivoted slightly, revealing a narrow seam. "Holy hell," she whispered. Back at the office, Clara Mae filed for an emergency warrant to investigate the sealed courtroom artifact. Bureaucracy fought back, suspicion, red tape, fear of precedent. But the Josie Bell Rollins cases gave her leverage. 2 days later, she returned with a locksmith, a photographer, and Wade Bonner, Clyde Mercer, Levi Hart forensic techs. They carefully opened the wall, preserving every inch. Inside, a weathered leather pouch tied with faded twine. Inside the pouch, a stack of microfilm, rolls, a handwritten letter, and a small metal disc, an old-school hard drive from the early 90s. Clara Mae unfolded the letter first. Judicial stationery, shaky handwriting, dated July 1991. To whoever finds this, I can't hold it anymore. They told me it was protocol, patriotic. She was a threat. But what they did to her, what I allowed, was torture with a gavel. Her name was Lila Rose McKenna, 19 pre-law. They said she leaked a file. They said she betrayed her country. She did nothing but ask questions, and I sentenced her to 30 years based on a briefcase that never existed. Judge Jed Polk. Clara Mae Whitlow felt the hair on her arms rise. Stryker let out a low growl. Microfilm was tedious, but the forensic techs Wade Bonner, Clyde Mercer, Levi Hart digitized the contents within hours. What emerged was shocking court transcripts, memos, phone logs, and a confidential letter from a private intelligence contractor dated 1989, directing the court to fast-track convictions under the guise of public security. Clara Mae read line after line evidence pointing not only to judicial abuse, but collusion with federal intelligence officials. And the name, Lila Rose McKenna, kept appearing. No mugshots, no public arrest records, no family testimonies, just a thin envelope with her name scribbled in black ink. Inside a newspaper clipping, missing student last seen leaving the campus library, investigation ongoing. Clara Mae sat frozen for long seconds. "This isn't just a bad sentence," she whispered. They erased her. The deeper she dug, the more connections she uncovered: code names, case numbers, judges' impartial names showing identical framing techniques. No coincidence, it was a pattern. And it all began with a painting, or rather, what was behind it. Clara Mae closed the file and grabbed her phone. "Hank, yeah, remember that judge from the McAllister case? The one who blocked access to the safe at first? Von Hill?" A pause. "Yeah. Still on the bench, I think. Served in state criminal court before federal appointment. Hold on. Yep. Guess what courtroom? Courtroom 2B at the old county building." Clara Mae's voice dropped. "Does it have a painting, big one? Horse running across a field?" Why, she slid her badge into her pocket. Time to break the next seal. Clara Mae and Stryker arrived at the old county building just after 6 p.m. The courthouse was technically closed, but the janitor recognized her from the news and let them in. The courtroom was cold, lit by a few recessed lights. At the far end, the painting a horse galloping through a sunlit meadow brush, strokes thick and heavy. Stryker walked to the bench, sniffed once, barked twice, then sat. Clara Mae smiled faintly. "Knew you'd say that." She climbed onto the bench, examining the back panel. No hinges, no frame, but the wall sounded hollow. She knocked heart jumping. Someone moved behind it. Clara Mae's hand froze mid-knock. She expected old documents, maybe a sealed letter, or microfilm like before. But movement. From behind the wall, she pressed her ear to the wood panel. The hollow thunk of her own heartbeat pounded in her ears. Then again, soft thud, scratch, scratch, tap. Her throat tightened. "Stryker," she whispered. The dog was alert, body rigid, ears forward, tail stiff. Low rumble, not aggression. "There's someone back there." She scrambled for her phone. "Hank, get the team to courtroom 2B. Bring EMTs." By the time the emergency unit arrived, Clara Mae had cleared the courtroom and sealed off the hallway. The locksmith team worked on the panel with drills and crowbars. Every second felt eternal. Stryker didn't bark. He paced, restless, agitated. Then with a loud crack, the panel gave way. A rush of stale, metallic air swept the room. Flashlights flicked on. The space maybe 4 feet deep, 6 wide. and in the center, slumped against the far wall in a heavy chair, a woman, pale, thin, mid-30s, at most, shackled by one ankle to a metal plate on the floor. A water jug beside her, a blanket draped a camera mounted above her head. Eyes hollow, sunken, but open. Clara Mae stepped forward, hand trembling. The woman flinched, whispered, "Please, don't turn the light off again." Clara Mae dropped to her knees. "You're safe now. My name's Clara. You're not alone." The woman blinked slowly. "I thought I was a ghost," she said. "I thought I was gone." Clara Mae reached for her hand. It was ice cold. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Layla Rose McKenna." Clara Mae nearly collapsed. The news spread like wildfire. Woman found alive in courthouse wall, missing 17 years from Abab Gopatisi. They rushed Layla to the hospital under guarded protection. The EMT said she was malnourished, but alert. Miraculously, her mind remained intact, frayed at the edges, but not broken. Clara Mae Whitlow sat beside her hospital bed the next day, watching the IV drip. Layla Rose McKenna's voice was still hoarse. "I stopped counting the days," she whispered. After a while, the light stopped coming. They kept telling me I'd done this to myself. "Who did Clara Mae?" asked. Layla's lips trembled. "A man, Hill. He said I was dangerous. Said I'd found something I shouldn't have. I just asked questions. I was writing a paper." "That's all it was," she continued. Clara Mae gritted her teeth. "He locked me in, said I was safer in silence. Sometimes he visited, but less and less. I thought I was dead." Clara Mae reached for her notes. "Do you remember anything else?" Layla hesitated. "There was someone else, another man. He wore gloves, gave me food, never spoke. I think he was afraid." Clara Mae nodded slowly. She didn't voice it, but her gut screamed one name: Judge Rufus Crane. At Task Force HQ. Stryker paced restlessly, sensing Clara Mae's urgency. She spent the next 72 hours cross-referencing court records, real estate documents, and maintenance logs for courtroom 2B. The contractor listed for minor renovations in 2009, Midland SecOps, a private security firm with former federal facility ties. Its legal counsel, Von Hill's daughter. Clara Mae cursed under her breath. This wasn't rogue. This was sanctioned, funded, hidden in plain sight, and Stryker, without language, without logic, had dragged it all into daylight with nothing but his bark. A federal investigation was launched immediately. Judge Rufus Crane was placed on administrative leave. Homeland Security swept the county building. Clara Mae testified before a closed grand jury, laying out the chain of events from the McAllister safe to the courtroom vaults. But it was Layla Rose McKenna's testimony that changed everything. In a quiet courtroom, cameras rolling, lawyers present, she said what the country wasn't ready to hear: "I was a student. I asked too many questions. When the system didn't like my curiosity, they erased me, but they didn't expect a dog to remember." Her voice didn't shake. Her hands stayed steady. Not a dry eye in the room, not even the bailiff. That night, Clara Mae returned to her apartment, exhausted. Stryker curled on the rug beside her head, resting on his paws, eyes half-lidded. She sank to the floor, running her hand over his back. "You brought her back," she whispered. "You did what a dozen lawyers, 3 judges, and 4 investigators couldn't. You listened." Stryker didn't respond. He didn't need to. Clara Mae looked at the wall where photos, clippings, and red string had once cluttered her thoughts. She removed all but one image, Layla's hospital bracelet with a sticky note reading, "Found not forgotten." In the following days, letters poured in hundreds from survivors, from families of wrongful convictions, from those who believed the system had stopped listening. One envelope stood out, no return address, a single word across the front hallway. Inside, a black and white photo of another courtroom. Another painting, this one a harbor at sunset. Scribbled on the back. He still paints the walls, but not all of them are empty. Clara Mae felt a chill run down her spine. She turned to Stryker. He was already up. The letter stayed on her desk for 3 days before she touched it again. She didn't know why. Perhaps part of her hoped it would just go away, that she could finish her report, close the McAllister case, and walk away with a clear conscience. But deep down, she knew there was one more door left unopened. And Stryker had been restless since the envelope arrived. Every night, he paced the apartment. Every walk he pulled toward the east side of town, the direction of the old Holloway District Courthouse. The same district referenced in the letter. The same courthouse closed in 2001 due to structural issues. Yet in the photo inside the envelope, the courtroom appeared intact. On the wall above the bench, captured in monochrome, hung a painting of a harbor at sunset. Crimson clouds stretched over still boats, sails down eerily quiet. Not all of them are empty. Clara Mae stared at the words scribbled on the back of the photo for the 100th time. He still paints the walls. That Friday, under cloudy skies and a brisk wind, Clara Mae and Stryker pulled up to the old Holloway courthouse. Time seemed to have collapsed in on the building, cracked windows, weeds, climbing brick walls, the official condemned sign hanging by a single nail. Clara Mae stepped out. Flashlight and file tucked in her jacket. "No backup today," she muttered, rubbing Stryker's head. "Just you and me." Stryker barked softly, as if to say, "Good. I've got your back." The front doors creaked in protest. Dust bloomed in the air. Clara Mae moved slowly, boots crunching over debris. Birds scattered from a broken skylight above. Inside, echoes followed them like ghosts. The main hallway was littered with toppled file cabinets and old chairs. Room after room seemed empty, dead, forgotten. But when they reached courtroom A, Stryker froze, body stiff, ears perked. Then a sharp bark. Clara Mae Whitlow aimed her flashlight ahead. The courtroom looked intact. A faint trail of footprints disturbed the dust. Above the judge's bench hung the harbor painting, now weathered beyond recognition. As she climbed the stairs to the bench, Stryker barked again, louder this time. She shined her light behind the frame. No visible screws, no panel lines. Then she noticed it. A smudge. Fresh. Fingerprints in the dust near the lower left corner. She pressed it. Click. The painting swung open, and what lay inside stole her breath. It wasn't a safe. It wasn't a hidden vault. It was a canvas painted directly onto the plaster behind the wall. At first, Clara Mae thought it abstract. Swirls of red charcoal, black, violent brush strokes. But stepping back, the image sharpened. A girl, pale, bound eyes wide in horror. The brushwork was hauntingly detailed. Beside it, scrawled in paint, a phrase. "One bark too late." Clara Mae backed away, stomach twisting. Stryker barked again, sharp and anxious. Then footsteps echoed from a corner behind them. Clara Mae spun flashlight up, hand instinctively near her holster. A figure stepped into the doorway. An older man. Early 70s, neat hair, dark coat, calm eyes. "Detective Whitlow," he said. "You came." Clara Mae squared her stance. "Judge Rufus Crane." He nodded once. "I wondered if you'd be clever enough to follow the painting trail. Brave enough to walk in without a warrant," she snapped. You and I both know this building doesn't exist on paper anymore." "It's a ghost," he said, almost amused. "Like the rest of them." Clara Mae didn't lower her flashlight. "You hid women behind walls." Crane exhaled. "I silenced liabilities. Girls who threatened systems, witnesses who wouldn't shut up, journalists, activists. Lila Rose McKenna was just one. There were others." "You've barely scratched the surface," Stryker growled, stepping forward. Crane looked at the dog and smiled. "He's the only reason this all unraveled. Irony, isn't it, that a dog's bark speaks louder than a judge's gavel?" Clara Mae stepped closer. "You kept paintings as trophies." "I kept history where it belongs silent," he said. "No remorse, only arrogance. You think this ends here?" "Clara." Mae raised her voice. Crane chuckled. "Oh no, Detective. This is just your beginning." Then he reached into his coat. Clara Mae reacted instantly. "Don't move!" But it wasn't a weapon. A lighter. He flicked it. The flame danced in his hand. "You see?" he whispered. "Some secrets are meant to burn." Clara Mae tackled him as the lighter fell, striking the wooden bench, igniting old files soaked with years of mildew. Flames rose fast. Too fast. Stryker barked frantically, circling Clara Mae and Crane as she cuffed the judge to the stair railing. Smoke poured from cracks in the floor. "Out," she shouted, pushing Stryker toward the exit. He hesitated. "Go!" she screamed. He bolted. She turned to Crane, coughing. "You're not dying in here. You're going to live through every headline." They made it out just as the roof collapsed behind them, sending a tower of smoke into the gray sky. Fire trucks screamed in from the main road. Clara Mae sat on the sidewalk, wrapped in a blanket. Crane was restrained in the back of a cruiser. Stryker pressed close to her leg, still shaking. She looked down. "You knew," she whispered. From the very first bark, he had nudged her hand with his nose. 2 weeks later, the Department of Justice announced a full federal investigation into Holloway-era judicial abuse and hidden disappearances. New victims were identified. Several sealed files were reopened. Clara Mae's task force grew from 2 desks to 20, and at the center of every story, Stryker the dog who barked, who never looked away, who refused to be ignored. Clara Mae was offered a promotion. She declined. "I'm not done yet, Clara," Mae Whitlow told Boone Slater. "There are still paintings we haven't looked behind." At a community event honoring Lila Rose McKenna and the other survivors, Clara Mae stood on stage, hand resting gently on Stryker's harness. Students, parents, veterans, and neighbors stood silently. She glanced down at her partner. Then she turned to face the crowd. This story began with a bark, a dog who didn't speak. He listened, and because he listened, people were saved. Truths were uncovered. Justice came knocking. In the end, sometimes the greatest heroes don't wear badges or robes. Sometimes they wear fur, and they don't bark for noise. They bark for the ones no one else hears. "Thank you for following this story about Clara Mae and Stryker," she said. "A tale of justice, courage, and a dog who never gave up. If you had a partner like Stryker, what would you ask him to find first? Let us know in the comments."